Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Speech Check. I am Sam,
And I'm Matt.
and this is episode 19.
And today we're going to talk about Ghost of Tsushima, the Ubisoft Forward event, and our favourite gaming genre.
But before we talk about any of that, Matthew, what have you been playing?
Well, Samuel, I've been playing a couple of different games. After my interest in World of Horror, which is still there, I shouldn't say after, I still love World of Horror and I kind of dip in and out of it. But because it's an alpha build, or I shouldn't say alpha, but a pre-release build, it doesn't have all of the content, and some of the areas of the game are like dead ends right now. So I'm kind of at the point where I can't really progress with it anymore. So I'm waiting for another patch to come out before I get back into it. Otherwise, I'm going to just get sick of it, and I don't want to do that for release.
Yeah.
So I've been looking for other games in the same genre, and my friend recommended Darkwood to me, which is a game I've heard a lot of good things about. It's like a smaller indie game. I think it counts as an indie game. On the face of it, I would love it. You know, it has that element of cosmicism. It's about like unknown horror. It's also from a Russian developer, so there's usually a very specific sense of desperate sadness that comes from games like that. In my experience, games like Pathologic as well have a very unique atmosphere to them. And I played it, and the game was really well presented. It's really good. It just looks awesome. Like, the camera angle doesn't cause any of the animations to suffer because it's like directly bird's eye, not isometric. So you're looking straight down at everything, and that can sometimes make things a little bit lost in terms of visual communication. But they've done a great job in having everything come to the player and you understand the environment. It looks really good, and the sound design is like amazing for how basic the presentation could be considered. By that I mean visual presentation. The sound of things moving around a house or a cabin in other rooms is absolutely terrifying. I should probably outline the game a little bit. You're in a small village in Russia. A wood kind of just like encompasses the whole village. It like stretches out, destroys roads, and completely surrounds the village so that everyone's cut off. Whenever anyone tries to leave, they just get lost in the woods and never come back. And one day your character, through persecution, because people think that you caused this issue, decides to venture into the woods and try and find a way out. But you also end up lost. And then this kind of fable ensues where you're like looking around this H.R. Geiger-esque wood where people are getting like molded into plants and stuff. And there's a trader that goes around, but he has the head of a fox, and he speaks to you in kind of like parables and stuff. It's very esoteric, and I was really enjoying it. But it relies on crafting mechanics. And it may seem shallow, but I really don't want to be told I need to collect 4 rags to make a torch every 5 minutes. It just really divorced me from wanting to pursue it. And I was kind of disappointed in myself for not being able to overcome that. So I shelved it, and I kind of chalked up in my head to, this is a good game, but it isn't the experience for me, even though the presentation is fabulous. So I gave that back. I got a return on it. I said I didn't like it very much. And instead I got Cultist Simulator, which is another kind of off-piste game, I suppose. It's not really something you typically see. It's kind of like a sprawling jigsaw game, I suppose. You have a table in front of you with different tiles, and each tile is a verb. And then the cards that are dealt are nouns. So you have work, and if you put one of your health cards into work, you do manual labor, which will give you money. If you work on passion, you'll do art, and you can create works of art to sell them, or maybe they will assuage some doubts or fears that you have. You can like work on your internal problems, and they can come out in the art, and that can help too. You could speak to the policeman who's decided that you're a person of interest about somewhere that you've been, or maybe you can speak to him about the evidence that he has and see where that leads you. The game is about combining all of these different nouns, using the verb tiles to progress your cult, stop yourself dying from hunger by working in a manageable way, and explore your dreams to the point where you can discover enough eldritch knowledge to progress the doctrines of your cult. And you have to kind of manage all of these elements. The whole game is time-based, so everything is always counting down or up. So you have to make sure that you just have to have everything on lock at all times. And recently I'm finding that those kinds of games that are more cognitively challenging are a bit more attractive to me. So I mentioned in the last episode when we spoke about World of Horror that I'd also been playing Assassin's Creed alongside that. And it's a great game, looks great, fun core loop, lovely. But it doesn't have that same kind of cognitive stimulation. I know the way the core loop moves, and that's mechanically challenging, and it can be a problem-solving event, from time to time. But a game like Cultist Simulator has you working full bore, trying to manage everything and also figure out the puzzle that you're working on to combine these elements in different ways to progress. I've been absolutely enraptured by it. I couldn't put it down. I've got about 30 hours in it, which is quite a lot. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. Sam, what have you been up to?
Jumping back to what you said about the crafting mechanics in Darkwood, is that crafting mechanics across all games, or is that games where narrative is more the primary function of the game?
I think it's crafting mechanics across all games. Like I mentioned about cognitive load and cognitive challenge, they're almost the opposite of that. They're more about storing and spending, I suppose. You learn what you need to do, but it takes you a long time to get to that point. So your knowledge, it only benefits you in part. It's more your willingness to grind that will benefit you. Like with Ark.
Yeah, I get what you mean actually with that, because like I said, if you've stored up on resource X, when you get to a certain point, it's like you can just kind of game that part by going, oh, well, I've got hundreds of bullets for this gun, so this part's going to be easy for me. Whereas having knowledge of the story in something like that game would benefit you more. I get what you mean. Kind of, it's a bit more gamey.
Yeah, it's more overtly just do this for a long time, and then you will be able to get whatever you need for the next part of the game. It isn't like you need to figure this out. You might have all of the pieces in front of you, but you just don't know how they fit together, which is a bit more interesting for me. It puts a bit more weight on the player, and you have to actually engage with it a little bit more.
That's fair. As much as like Cultist Simulator sounds like a good game mechanic-wise, it does sound interesting, but it just doesn't sound like a game that I'd ever play.
Mm.
I think XCOM's the closest I'd get to that.
We have very different tastes in what we get invested in, which is good.
Yeah, it's good, because we've got a lot to talk about on here.
Variety is the spice of life.
Exactly. Unfortunately, I've not been adding variety in that I've just been playing more of Red Dead, because I actually want to get it finished. I know what's coming, because I'm not going to announce spoilers for anybody, but people by now, I imagine, would know what is entailed in that game, just because it's a AAA game. It's been covered a lot of places, so people would probably be able to guess the things that are awaiting in story.
Mm.
But I'm in chapter 6 now, which I believe is the final numbered chapter. There is an epilogue as well, I believe. And I know like the name of the mission, where things happen, and that mission is now available. So I saw it last night and I was like, oh no.
Ooh.
Oh no. But yeah, the game gets to a certain point. I'll put in a little spoiler thing and let people, if they want to skip ahead, they can do. So I'll say spoilers now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a point where your character Arthur he gets sick. He can it goes downhill so quickly. Like you get marooned on an island, you get arrested, you then eventually come back, but you have to fight in the civil war, and then you come back and you get tuberculosis, and then that just permanently affects you throughout the rest of the game.
Oh man, you play with it, but does it affect you for gameplay as well?
Like your health and stamina cores, so you have like a ring, and that's your active stamina or health now, and then the core is how fast that regenerates. And having tuberculosis, I think minuses 20% for both of those. So it has it does have an adverse effect.
Mm.
I've put it down to, it's like driving a really nice car off a cliff. Like you enjoy the ride and it's great to be in the car, but you know where you're going to end up.
Mm.
Yeah, but I'm slowly inching my way there, and I did a few more challenges, killed a few more of the legendary animals, and I spent about a good 20 minutes to half an hour rowing to this island where a legendary fish was, because the boats or the canoes that they have in the game, like these little one-man canoes, they just kind of spawn randomly around the shorelines. So it took a while to find one that was actually available, and then that happened to just be a good mileage away from where the actual fish was. So yeah, that took a good 30 minutes, and so I did that. I just thought, okay, I'm going to accept my fate here, put on like a podcast or something, and then rode to the island. But such is the life of an achievement hunter. You accept you got to do those kind of things.
Sometimes it's a trial.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing. Bit short and sweet this week.
Fair enough. Thank you for sharing.
No problem. So that is what we've been playing, but Matt now is going to inform us about the releases. Matt, take it away.
I am, and we've had a good couple of weeks for it as well. There's been a couple of high-profile releases I'm actually a bit excited to talk about for different reasons, and you're about to find out what those reasons are. So the first release is Ghost of Tsushima from Sucker Punch Studios, coming out the 17th of July 2020. Sucker Punch have previously worked on the Sly Cooper games for the PlayStation and the Infamous series that I think had about three installments on the PS3, I think, actually.
I think, yeah, there was maybe a handheld one as well for the PSP or the PS Vita, but yeah, primarily the trilogy, I think.
So this is a open world game set in feudal Japan where you play a samurai who has to slowly change his code of ethics to defeat the Mongol invaders. So it's set during a real period of history, but all the characters are fictional. And it's based heavily on the Kurosawa films, which is like classic samurai films. And after doing a little bit of research into it, they're kind of like westerns. They have that kind of vibe. Like you get showdowns and standoffs and even, like the High Noon style reaching for the gun kind of thing. You get that sort of stuff. But
it's like that version of it, right?
Yeah, like they're like one slice finishes a fight and they're just like building up to that, which is kind of cool. And this game really apes that. There's a lot of elements of it that are trying to emulate that kind of feeling. But before I get onto that, it's a third-person action stealth game. Don't switch off your brain. It's not that kind of action stealth game. We hear that thrown around a lot. And on the face of it, the combat looks a little bit Soulsy, if you know what I mean. It's a little bit stamina bar, poise meters, and you might think, oh god, here we go. But it's actually more like the Arkham series meets The Witcher. So you have your like 360 combat arena where you can spin around and slice at any singular opponent or defend against their attacks or dodge out of the way. But at the same time, there's a bit more investment. No shade thrown to the Arkham series, but it's a 3-button repeat kind of affair. You can get into a rhythm of, I know exactly how to deal with this. Whereas Ghost of Tsushima has a bit more complexity in that way with different stances that you can adopt. So if you have a heavily armored opponent, you might adopt the mountain stance or whatever, whereas the wind stance enables you to move faster. They are called, I think it's stone and wind. I think they've got elemental names. For all intensive purposes, the action looks incredibly satisfying, the actual combat itself. And you can begin the combat when you go into an encampment or you find a group of roving bandits. You can begin the combat with a standoff. So you're challenged by one of the bandits, and then you have a really small QuickTime event where you have to stand and wait for them to attack you, and then you kill them in a single slice, and then combat begins proper. And I think that's kind of an awesome way to start that off. And as you go through the game, you can get different abilities that enable you to slice through one person and then slice to the next, and you can end up having a group of 5 people that will approach you, and then in one swift set of movements, you just take them all down. It seems awesome. What's not so awesome, unfortunately, is the stealth, which is pretty basic. The moveset for the main character is baseline. You become invisible when you crouch in high grass. You can throw rocks to distract people, and then you can assassinate them from behind. You have your detective mode-esque, I think it's they call it listening, a bit like in The Last of Us, where you can listen to enemies and it kind of highlights them through walls. So you have those kind of same tropey mechanics that we've seen before, and the AI doesn't deal with you going in and out of stealth particularly well. They struggle to move from the stealth to the combat phase and then backwards and forwards. But I don't know if that'll be fixed in later patches and whatnot.
You can kind of route them around a bit easier.
Well, from what I've seen, they just get confused. Like if you stealth into a building, they'll just like stare at the building on alert, but not come and start a fight with you. And if you start a fight and then stealth, they might always be able to find you or never be able to find you, or their pathfinding will get a bit strange. So it seems more like a bug than anything else.
They haven't got the Skyrim guard programming.
What was that noise? It was the arrow striking me in the face.
Yeah, must have been the wind.
Yeah, definitely wasn't like my cranium cracking in two. So from the gameplay to the presentation, it looks amazing. It really shows off what the PS4 is capable of. And it's kind of like a dying title, it's like a last gasp sort of thing. We've got the PS5 around the corner and this comes out and it makes you go, wow. Really great draw distances, really great particle effects. The trees, the wind, the grass, everything looks awesome. Speaking of the wind, they have an alternative way of handling quests and quest markers. So instead of having a mini-map that lights up with exclamation marks and then a little, arrow or golden trail that takes you to wherever you want to go, the wind in the game acts as the direction you should travel. So while you're exploring the environment,
I really like that.
It will blow grass and trees, and they'll subtly increase the presence of particle effects. So you might get like petals or pollen that move in the direction that you should move to go to the next quest, which is amazing. I think that's a really clever way to allow someone to get themselves into an environment and just experience it. You're not constantly dropping out to your minimap and being like, waypoint.
Yeah, whoever was in the dev team that thought of that, they were like, what if we use the wind? Everyone was like, oh, you can imagine that moment in the design meeting.
I like to think everyone just started clapping and stood up.
Yeah, no one said that's good, that's bad. Everyone just started applauding.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Like I said, it lets you get invested in the environment. You can look around. You can, I think, you press either the touchpad to increase the effects of the wind. So if you're struggling to notice, you can press the touchpad and it will activate a gust so that you can see exactly where you need to go. So it does allow you that a little bit more signaling.
It's got that beginner help stuff.
Yeah, if you need it.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great way of handling the quest tracker stuff that we're all a bit too used to with open world games.
It's less intrusive, definitely.
Yeah. Sadly, when you get into the quests, it does seem a bit more typical of maybe even a Rockstar game, speaking about Red Dead, where you go to someone, they've got a symbol above their head, you talk to them, there's a section where you just stand and talk, and then you will slowly follow them, and if you do anything outside of what they want you to do, you go back and then you do it again until you do it right. It suffers from that open world quest design, but outside of that, it seems really awesome. And
if I may, sorry,
go on.
Just jump in, just because I've got a very relevant point on that. I was watching a Twitch stream last week where they were looking at the IGN review of it, and particularly in Red Dead 2, and kind of more in GTA, but less prominent because you were in vehicles, and in Red Dead you're on horses, so traveling is naturally slower.
Mm-hmm.
They were criticizing heavily, the person I was watching, about this pseudo faux cutscenes that you have where it just takes ages to get somewhere and you just have tons of dialogue on the way there. They were critical of Rockstar in doing that, and that's just a really a fallback to it's not gameplay. It's masquerading as gameplay, but it's essentially a cutscene that doesn't have the black bars in or a loading screen.
It's an endemic particularly in open world games, I find. You get the expo dump from the important character, then you go on and play the game, and if you don't do this quest exactly as marked out, then fail, do it again. Stealth missions in those games. Oh god.
Yeah, they're not its finest moments. They do try, but there's not always. It's not the mission, or they are the missions you remember, but for all the wrong reasons.
Alongside the quest design, you have an a-traditional leveling structure. So instead of going into some sub-menu and putting points into webs or trees or whatever it may be, you upgrade your gear, and the more Mongols and Mongol chieftains that you defeat, you learn new techniques. And apparently you can do that by observing them as well. So you don't always have to fight everyone. You could just watch someone fight and then learn from them. I think
that's cool.
It seems interesting, and it means that from the early game to the late game, all of your combat encounters are meaningful. And although the difficulty rises, it's not because he's level 20 and I'm level 10 and I just don't do as much damage. It's because my gear isn't quite as strong, or I don't have the right technique, or I've not learned enough. It's a bit more organic, or it seems as though it's a bit more of an organic experience, which is pretty cool. This one, for me, is a pickup. I have a PS4, and I'm heavily considering getting it. Also, not forget the voice acting. They've got a lot of prominent real-world actors to play the cast of main characters, and they also have all of the dialogue in Japanese, but they haven't lip-synced it for Japanese. So you can have the game's audio in Japanese, and they have a Kurosawa mode. So they take away all the color from the game. It's played in black and white, but all the blood stays red to emulate the look of the old films, which is pretty cool.
I like that.
I had a kind of a little question on the back of this. Have open world games gone as far as you think they can go? Are we just retreading the same ground now? Because when I hear open world game, I know exactly what to expect. And there was a time when they were brand new, and it was like, what? There's no linearity. But now it's like, oh, okay. You expect a AAA game to be open world, you know?
I think because you can cover so many different aspects within one game, and you can add in crafting, exploration, distractions. There's just so many things you can fit into that game, and I guess you can sell it content-wise as a bigger and better thing. Whereas if you pick an RPG, first-person shooter, they're a bit more linear and focused. So I think it's almost, I guess, Rockstar's fault for making a lot of money from them, especially now from things like GTA Online and, to a lesser extent, Red Dead Online. It's the same way that EA did with FIFA and Ultimate Team. They created this new, at the time, exciting way of interacting with the game, especially in a PvP sense. And everyone thought, oh, that's great, and it makes loads of money. Let's do our own version of that. So I guess like anything that gets popular, it kind of becomes oversaturated. And I think the thing is to not do them all the time. I think I was chatting with someone about it yesterday, that there's nothing inherently wrong with any of the Assassin's Creed games. It's just that they came out every single year, and they were so marginally different. Like when an open world game comes out, you can guess 75%, maybe even like 90% of the things that are going to be in it. But it's just stylistically, how is that different from the last one, or how is that mechanic interpreted differently? Like on this, they've still got a waypoint system, but it's the wind, and that's naturally incorporated into the game. So that's like a different way of doing it, but there's still a lot of system in it. So yeah. I think they're fine to exist, but they should reduce the frequency in which they come out. I don't know how you feel about that, Matt. I know open world game generally isn't your bag.
I don't mind them, but I think like you, there's maybe a bit of open world fatigue going on, and when it's almost a joke to say climb the tower, activate the waypoints. You know exactly what's going on. And it was, Far Cry 3, loved that game. That was great. It was probably the third game that I'd ever played that had done that. And now we're on like the 40th, 50th time that we've seen an open world game with side quests, and it's like, okay, cool. But it's just like you said, it's just fatigue. Just fatigue on the mechanic. Maybe we should start exploring other ways to put together a world.
I think as well, if they weren't, say if like the next Far Cry comes out and it's not, even though that does look amazing, by the way, but that's Ember news, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. If it came out and it was like 30 quid or, $35 or whatever, I think that would maybe ease the sting of it. But when you've got Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed 2.5, Assassin's Creed 2.75, essentially coming out every year at a full 40 to 50 pounds/dollars, people are like, well, why should I pay for this again?
Yeah, it has enough changed.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, that's a big thumbs up from me. Pick it up. Next on the high-profile releases is Paper Mario Origami King, coming us from Intelligent Systems, also the 17th of July 2020. The developer worked on the Thousand Year Door, Advance Wars, and a number of other Nintendo titles. They've got a long history of making games with Nintendo. I
love both those games you just mentioned.
Well, then I think I'm about to disappoint you.
Oh, God.
So this is your pretty typical Mario setup. You're in the kingdom. Some bad dude, this time the Origami King, comes along, takes the castle away, and you've got to stop him from folding up all the inhabitants into his image. And that includes going across a bunch of different hub worlds, interacting with different things, and trying to stop that from happening. It's got elements of the Thousand Year Door still in there, so you travel these hub worlds and there's like overworld challenges, like spreading confetti around to cover up holes, finding secret toads. There's some motion controls in there where you have to like tear strips off of stuff to reveal characters. That's pretty underutilized. It's not a big mechanic in the game. I think the main thing I want to talk about in this is the battling mechanics, because they've done something really strange with them. Thousand Year Door, as we spoke about in our 3v3 episode on Mario games,
which you should definitely go and watch after this,
has a really great battling mechanic, like RPG battling mechanic, and we both appreciated that in different ways. Me with Legend of the Seven Stars, and you with Thousand Year Door. And this game just really completely ditches it. It doesn't build upon it. It goes for something completely different. Where instead of having your standard RPG turn-based battle setup, one set of people on one side, one set of people on the other, you pick your moves and you go ahead and fight. And like with the other entries in the Mario RPG series, you can attack at certain times and press the attack button to increase the power of your attacks, or you can defend, or you can do special moves. Instead, you have Mario stood in the middle of like a sumo ring with concentric circles going out from him. And all the enemies stand on spots on these concentric circles. And before you perform a move, you spin the circles to either group the enemies in a line or in a group of 4. And then you can either jump on them or hit them with a hammer. And if you've grouped the enemies sufficiently, so if they're in a big line, you jump on each one, damage bonus. If you hit 4 with a hammer, damage bonus. And that's kind of it. That's the whole battling mechanic. So it's more of like a puzzle game now. And there's not really that much choice. You know, in the previous games, you had a lot of different moves that Mario could perform. You had items, and then you also had companions that had a completely separate set of moves. There's no companions anymore. They're there for story purposes, and they do sometimes do something in combat. So the companions are gone, the moves are gone, the items are still there, but all they do is power you up. So if you put the steel boots on, they'll either be more effective or more effective against some enemies. And that's it. It kind of took away all of that decision-making from the previous games, which really, really disappointed me. I was hoping this was going to be, you know, the next step in that evolution, and they were going to add something more to it, but it seems less, a lot less. The boss fights are kind of interesting because they reverse the tables on Mario. So the boss is now in the center of this sumo type arena, and Mario is on the outside, and he has to line up different actions to reach the center of the arena and strike the boss either on their weak side or use special one-time events. So there's an elemental boss who's covered in ice, and you have to like summon a phoenix to come and breathe fire on him or something. But you have to do these things in a certain order to defeat the boss. I think it still pales in comparison. Oh, and there's paper mache enemies. I almost forgot to mention them because they seem kind of throwaway. Because that combat happens in the overworld, where you just get a big 3D enemy and you just run around them hitting them with a hammer, and then they go away, and that's kind of it.
Oh.
The story is still, you know, fun. We know the Mario RPG series having lots of puns and jokes and little references all over the place, and it still has all of that. But for me, this is a miss. You know, I like the Mario RPG games because they allow someone to engage with RPG-like mechanics in the Mario universe with that sense of humor. But I think if you're anyone who actually likes RPGs, I don't know if this is going to be for you. If you like puzzle games, this might be more your bag. My advice would be just play the Thousand Year Door again, personally.
Do you think that this simplification of the Paper Mario franchise, as it were, do you think that's an indication that Nintendo is trying to pull in maybe a younger demographic? Like, from what I know, Super Mario Odyssey is probably just as complex or as hard as something like Sunshine or 64, so it might have that like skill barrier to younger gamers. So do you reckon this, especially in its aesthetic, is trying to put in a younger fan base?
Maybe. From what I understand of Odyssey, the main quest line is actually quite easy, and you only get the complexity if you go back to previous levels and try and get some of the hidden moons. Almost said shines then. The hidden moons and the secrets in the level. Like, getting the core number of moons that you need to complete the game is pretty low effort, you know. It's somewhat taxing, but if you were like 13, you wouldn't have a problem with it. And
okay.
Maybe making it more accessible. You know, maybe that's the reason.
Yeah, maybe it might be because they've been fairly open with, you know, wanting to use Mario and their other first-party IPs as gateway experiences to get younger audiences involved. So maybe this is like a tactical play rather than a critical fan service one. Yeah,
it could be. Well, I guess we'll see in the coming months how it does. You know, sales and reviews will come out, and we'll see how it goes.
I want to pick it up, but you know, I've just seen that it's okay, and I know that I won't be able to pick it up for less than 50 quid because that's how Nintendo games roll.
Yeah. Paper Mario Origami King, I give it a miss. The last game this week is Nexamon from Vivo Interactive, coming out the 10th of July 2020. I'm going to read the tagline from the game, and I'm gonna just, let you make your own conclusions.
Okay.
Catch, evolve, and collect over 300 unique Nexomon. Assemble the ultimate Nexomon team to save your friends and save the world. Clash against legendary champions and become a hero in this epic journey.
I can hear Nintendo ringing them now.
Hello, lawsuit.
It's
Pokemon.
Wow.
It's Pokemon.
Almost shamelessly Pokemon, yeah.
It's like exactly the same. So this was initially a mobile release that got a port to Steam recently. And in its defense, it is apparently one of the best Pokemon clones that there is. It invokes the DS era Pokemon games. Really, there's not a huge amount to say about it. They've crafted their own story, but the gameplay just is Pokemon. You throw Nexo traps to grab Nexomon, and you train them up, they evolve and learn different moves, and I'm just describing Pokemon at this point.
Yeah, where's the line between inspiration and outright copying?
Yeah, like, is it okay to just say, well, Pokemon did well, so I'm going to make a clone, and I'm going to change the words very slightly? Is that... it's creatively bankrupt, but is it immoral, or does it matter? Like, is it... They say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right? So...
I would have, like, if you'd made something that did really well, and then you had 50 games pop up that were... You can definitely see where inspiration is taken from certain mechanics, but then, like, they're literally called Mon, you know? They're not even... It's like they're not even trying to hide what they're doing. So...
No. Yeah.
I don't know. It would definitely annoy me if I made something like that, and then someone straight up copied it, and then was also making money from it. Because, I mean, a big part of a game is the artistic process that comes with creating it, right?
Mm.
And for someone to just leech that idea, go, okay, if you just come up with all the answers and I'll just copy them. It's like you get the kid in school who would just copy, like, wouldn't do the homework or whatever, and would just copy yours before the teacher came in. You know, it's just annoying.
Yeah. I think for me, the cherry on the top of the theft cake that made it so that I thought this game, I don't like this game. It's a cheap game. It's only like £2 or something, but with tons of in-app purchases. So you can buy currency. That means that you can buy Nexo traps that always succeed, or experience share objects, or you can buy a bunch of ancillary items. You don't need to do it, but it exists in the game. So it's clear what they wanted. They wanted to push out a game that they could just quickly code and not spend too much time developing mechanics.
It's just a vessel for in-app purchases.
Yeah, essentially. But, if you really like the DS Pokemon games and you're sad that you can't play them on your PC, this might be the answer to that for you. So that's all my releases. I'm done.
Thank you, Matt. I'm enlightened, as always.
No worries, man. That's me done with what's come out. Sam, tell me what I should be looking out for in the world of news.
I will tell you that right now. So my first one is that there's a new tech academy opening in Bournemouth in the UK. The academy is being opened by Ian Livingstone, who you may or may not know as the co-founder of Games Workshop.
I'm currently looking at his selection of books that he wrote with Steve Jackson right now, so he is a god to me.
So you definitely know who he is.
Yes.
It's going to be named the Livingstone Academy, which, not a very inventive name, but at least you know what you're getting into. It's going to be dedicated to science, technology, and digital skills. It's going to be opening next September 2021. And it's going to be able to take 1,500 pupils. It's going to follow the UK national school curriculum, but it's going to put more of a focus on STEM subjects and the arts. STEM, if you don't know, is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. According to the Academy website, it's going to put emphasis on, quotes, the future of work in the 21st century, and lists 10 skills for 21st century success. And it cites things like critical thinking and social intelligence, entrepreneurialism, that's a word to say, media literacy, and, quotes, cognitive load management, which apparently it describes as the, quotes, ability to discriminate and filter information for importance. So it's going in on these things. And it's apparently going to allow the students to build up a digital portfolio, I guess, through school. So by the time you reach the point where you would leave school, go into college or uni or whatever, go get a job, you already have like I guess, a ready-made list of stuff that you can show to an employer and say, like, this is all the things that I've made. You can have practical, physical examples that you can display. So I wish I'd had that when I was in school. I came out of school with literally nothing. Like maybe an old dirty PE kit, and that was it. But yeah, I think this is a really progressive move. I personally have a few issues with it, at the very least, the UK school system / curriculum, and how I don't think school in general teaches life skills. I don't really like to use that word, but I feel like I'm kind of learning and winging that now. But like schools don't really. I don't know how you feel about this, Matt. But I wish I would have been shown how to like open a bank account, or given some mock work interviews, or how to write a CV. Just something that's a bit more ready in the last maybe 2 or 3 years that prepares you for going into adult life. I find you just gonna get dumped on the doorstep almost and go, okay, well, you're on your own now.
Yeah, I mean, I like the school system. I think it's great, and I think the stuff that they teach does prepare you for a lot of things in a lot of different ways. And the acquisition of knowledge, even if some of it is a bit antiquated, is really important. But I completely agree with you. Like, I think taking away the ambiguity from certain vernaculars, especially surrounding financial institutions, is huge, because it can be a real big barrier to entry for some people to even want to go to a bank or to talk about how you move into a place. They're huge things that you just don't know how to do when you're a child, and having someone give you just a little bit of an introduction to that, I think that's a really good thing. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not advocating like school anarchy or anything. We should abolish educational things. It's more just the criticism of I think they could add a few subjects in, or they could teach, like you said, things like how to deal with financials or economics in some way. I think that would be a lot better thing to add to a curriculum.
Particularly like the media literacy and the cognitive load management, because I think we're just in a different world now where information is shared differently. So educating someone on how that information may or may not be manipulated, or what is important, what's not important, and how to structure your time. I think time management would be a great skill to learn overtly. So yeah, it's good.
I know plenty of actual adults, because I don't consider myself as an actual adult, of actual adults that are poor time management people. So I think that could be definitely a skill that could be added to the curriculum in some way. Well, that's the first one. On to my second one, is that the price rise from Next Gen has been backed by the God of War director, who is Corey Barlog, who you may or may not be aware of.
The guy that cried when he saw the feedback, right? He was happy, a happy man.
He was. That was a wholesome video. I like that. So this first all kind of came out when NBA 2K21 was announced, that on the next gen, so PS5, Xbox X, it's going to have a plus $10, which I think is just shy of another £8. I think it's like £7.91 or something. For the next gen, it's going to have an extra $10+ to it, so it's going to be $70 as opposed to the standard $60 that games for this current gen are sold at. Naturally, people don't want to have to pay any more money for things, especially as something that games of, as we get more and more, I guess, technologically advanced, like the jump from like a PS2 to PS3 or PS1, sorry, to PS2 is probably a bit more of a bigger jump. If you were told then you had to pay an extra $10 for a game, you'd be like, okay, well, this game looks awesome, I could do more, the technology is further along, it's a bit more of an easier pill to swallow. Whereas going from, I think, Xbox One or PS4 to a PS5, I don't think the jump will be that tangible. It's just like the equipment is getting better, so you have shorter load times or better frame rates. So it's less tangible, noticeable things unless you're into that kind of stuff. Plus, you've got in-game purchases on pretty much every AAA title in some form. But this news, however, was backed up by Mr. Corey Barlog, who he replied to a tweet about it saying that, quotes, games need to go up in price. I prefer an initial increase in price to the always-on cash grab microtransactions filled that some games have become. Now, I get the essence of what he's saying, in that if you have a higher base price for a game, it's almost like a bit more of a guarantee that contained experience might be able to like subvert an in-game ecosystem. But I think it's ironic the game that he's criticizing has been, particularly NBA in previous incarnations, has been like criticized for how it leans a lot on in-game transactions, similarly to the way that FIFA does. So I don't think I get the meaning of what he's saying, but I think for games that he makes, primarily single player experiences like God of War or maybe something like The Last of Us. I know it has a PvP, but it's sold as a single player game. That principle works for there, but I don't think you can't apply that rule to everybody because not everybody's going to be making those games. If I'm making myself clear on that.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee of quality, basically, just to say you're paying more for a game. Matt, I'd imagine what you think about this.
I mean, nobody wants to pay more for a game, right? Nobody wants to be paying more. They're already pretty expensive, the AAA games, especially when you start to think about all the kinds of deluxe and pre-order bonus statues, helmets, terribly crafted bottles of alcohol. Looking at you, 76.
Do you know sorry, just jump in. The most expensive edition of the next FIFA you could buy, so FIFA 21, which I think is called the Ultimate Edition, is 90 quid.
What? I mean, what does it come with?
I don't know. You probably get extra like packs in Ultimate Team and maybe a couple of extra weird stuff, but it wasn't too specific in what you get. You're basically prepaying, I think, for gold tier equipment, or like you're basically prepaying for loot boxes already when you sign up.
Therein lies the problem. Like, I'd love to believe his logic. Paying more for a game means that it's more sustainable, so they don't have to look to shady means to get money out of players. But the people who will do those things will just do them anyway. They'll release a game with the higher price and put the microtransactions in. They don't care. Yeah,
I think by upping the price, I don't think it's going to shave off that, because
no,
you're trading in a one-off purchase for a constant stream of revenue, which games just aren't going to do. And from a business point of view, you're just not going to do that, right? On to my final big one. My main news story is that the Ubisoft Forward event happened. So this was like a mini E3 type event. They definitely weren't, I don't think they were trying to sell it as an E3, but it definitely did form it into that. This happened back on the 12th of July, and they kind of just showed a handful of projects that they're working on, both upcoming and updates to games and stuff that already exist. And this was a bit of a strange one, because there's been some bad stuff happening at Ubisoft at the moment. They didn't comment on this, but there's been resignations of like 3 high-profile people, ironically including the global head of HR, who left after sexual misconduct accusations.
Oh, God.
Now, I haven't seen anything about whether these people have been prosecuted or what allegations they were, so I'm not going to spout rumours or add fuel to the fire in any way, because I don't feel like I should be adding to that discussion if I don't have any concrete proof or have done any proper research on it. So they claim that it was because the event is pre-recorded, but apparently the allegations came out, or started to come out, about a month ago, a little bit longer now. So they did really, I think, have time to address it, but find a little way to get around it. But yeah, the pre-show revealed Curious Expedition 2 and Mythic Quest, which is a game development show, which is on Apple TV Plus, which that's niche content right there on that. I didn't realize Apple TV Plus had original programming, but I guess why not? There was some 80s themed items for The Crew 2, and a new game called Spiritfarer, which I didn't look into anymore because it just didn't sound interesting. And there was a few details about The Division 2 as well. Trials Fusion is going to get a free DLC pack, which is called the Giga Track, which is apparently the longest track in Trials history. And Ghost Recon Breakpoint is going to get fully customizable AI teammates in its next update, which actually happened the Wednesday just gone. And it's having a free weekend right now.
Ooh.
So it might be a good time to get into that. We did actually mention about the updates to Breakpoint on a previous episode. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but we definitely covered it.
We did, yeah.
Tom Clancy's name has been slapped on a new game. It's called Elite Squad, which, to me, it looks like they went to the Fortnite art directors and was like, we want you to make our next game. It was only a reveal trailer. It wasn't a gameplay trailer. But it looks like it has class-based mechanics in it. I don't know if it's going to be PvP or not. I don't know if it's going to be like a Clash of Clans type thing, but only PvE. But there was like a guy with a riot shield, a guy with a sniper. They were setting out or showing characters that were all pretty much basic class stereotypes. But then at the end of it, Sam Fisher pops up, which I think, I don't know, maybe annoyed people because I think they were waiting and hoping for a Splinter Cell announcement in some way. I think this is their way of giving it to people without actually giving them a Splinter Cell game.
Diablo Mobile all over again.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's a mobile title. It's going to be coming out on August 27th. When they announced it was a mobile title, I was a bit like, oh, okay, that's maybe less angry. But then that was all the pre-show, and the main event kicked off with a cinematic trailer for Watch Dogs Legion, which advertised its big play as anyone you see mechanic, and that gave October 29th as a release date for the current gen, but they've not revealed any details about what's happening next gen. Brawlhalla, which is like the Ubisoft's answer to Super Smash Bros., that's going crossplay on August 6th when it goes onto mobile. So if you're into some hardcore S&M, you can play that on there and try and play people that are playing on PC and try and keep up with them. Who does that, man? Who plays that, or like Fortnite or PUBG on mobile? What kind of sadist do you have to be?
Certainly a handicap, or at least I think it would be.
They've bigged up their own Battle Royale, because are you even a dev now? A big AAA dev if you don't have your own Battle Royale, which is called Hyperscape, and that's actually on open beta on PC right now. I don't know if it's coming to any consoles yet, but I've seen a few people play it. It looks okay. Looks a little bit generic, to be honest. It kind of looks somewhere between Apex, Titanfall, and not PUBG. Another title I can't think of off the top of my head, but it looks a little bit generic. They dropped an actual gameplay trailer for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I think people have been waiting, I guess, more. There was a time where everybody hated Assassin's Creed, and now it's kind of had a bit of a renaissance since maybe Origins. Is that the Egypt one?
They took a year off, didn't they? They took a year off to try and redevelop it, and Origins was a result of that.
Yeah, and I think from there it's seemed like a new lease of life. I don't know if any different dev teams have taken a stab at it, but people are very excited for Valhalla because it's Vikings, and everybody loves Vikings. It showed off the combat, which to me looks a lot like Shadow of Mordor. I don't know if you've seen it, Matt, but it rang of that to some degree, which I know Shadow of Mordor in turn also kind of rings a bit of Arkham.
Yeah, I've seen some gameplay of it, and it looks a little bit more that way. You know, not your typical AC combat. It seems interesting enough.
Yeah, it looks like they've taken a step in the right direction where they tried to develop it a bit more. Yeah, they showed off the combat. That was a big focus of it, and they showed off like different enemy types. The raids you can do, where you do the kind of typical synonymous Viking things of raiding and pillaging and burning down villages and all that kind of great stuff. Exploration, going around like famous landmarks. I think I saw Stonehenge, or their version of Stonehenge, where they were running around in it.
Ooh.
And they dropped a release date, which is going to be November 17th, which is hardly surprising. Any game they want to ship will come out late November for the Christmas period. They know exactly what they're doing. It's not their first rodeo even. But probably the biggest news is the reveal trailer that came out for Far Cry 6, which features Giancarlo Esposito, which many people might know as Gus from Breaking Bad. That's probably his most notable role. I watched it all the way through, and normally Far Cry games are a bit, as we mentioned in our open world rant earlier. But he gave a hell of a performance, even in just like this sort of 3 to 4 minute trailer. Like that made me want to play it just to be able to interact with his character. But yeah, I hope that we are able to cover that in a future episode. But overall, people were a little bit disappointed. I think people were hoping for Beyond Good and Evil 2. Like I said, maybe a new Splinter Cell. But apparently there's another event that's going to be happening in the summer. So maybe we'll get different details, or the details that people want to hear about more then. But yeah, I think, Joe, I did have a question for you about, or is this the way that companies are going to go now in this Nintendo Direct style thing of doing their own events and announcements? But I believe we covered that on a previous episode. So
I think we did, yes.
If you want to hear what we think about that, go check out that episode. I can't remember what it is, but just listen to all the episodes until you find the right one. Listen
to the entire back catalogue, and one of them will have something in it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my news for this week. I hope you're enlightened, Matt.
I am, as always. Thank you very much. That was Sam giving us a window into the world of news. I have a question for you now, Sam.
Hit me.
A question from 2 weeks ago. What are our favourite genres of video game?
So anyone that's listened to any previous episodes may know I'm a big fan of like classical platformers. So anything from like NES or SNES, Super Mario, and Donkey Kong Country. I've got a weird affinity for Donkey Kong Country games. I don't know why. I remember we said once that I really wanted to get, I think, Tropical Freeze. That's like just a 3D one. You're just like, nah. Which is fair. It's definitely fine to have those diverse interests, but it was more of a thing of, I was like really wanted to own that, and you were like, no, it's just a platform in it, which I get.
Yeah, it just didn't grab me. It doesn't grab me.
I mean, if you're not into that if that's what primarily the game is based around, then why would you own it? Games to I guess they're kind of platformers, but they move a little bit in a different direction. So Crash Bandicoot, big fan of as well, and the slightly collectathon breed of games like Spyro and Banjo-Kazooie. Love them when I was growing up. And I was thinking about it in the week. The best sequel to a video game ever is Banjo-Tooie, in that it improves everything that Banjo-Kazooie did. Everything that was in Banjo-Kazooie, it does a +1 in Banjo-Tooie. But that is definitely a conversation for a different day.
I was going to say, like, that's a whole question in itself.
But with platformers, I think they're gaming in its rawest form, but they have like an almost infinite, I guess, boundary of a skill ceiling. So like you can play a Super Mario game, you can take 100 hours to do it. You can fail and stuff, and eventually you can probably just barrel your way through it. But like an expert can do these insane maneuvers, like we were talking about on 3v3 about Super Mario 64, of how watching a speed run is like it's almost a completely different game. And I think I like that. I guess that chasm of from beginner to how good you can get at it. So I think maybe that's a big draw for me. I do like my open world titles as well. Things like Red Dead and GTA, Zelda. If you can, Breath of the Wild definitely isn't more of an open world game, but I don't think you could potentially class the other games as that. They're set in an open world, but I wouldn't define them maybe as open world games.
No, more, I guess hub world games.
Yeah, that's probably a better label to put on them. I like them in the sense that I'm an achievement hunter, so there's a lot for me to do in it, and a lot of the times the stuff that I've done that other people haven't done in games it's open world games that require a grind or a lot of time put into them. And I think I've got like there's like satisfaction in having the willpower to overcome that. And there's a weird thing of like finding the quickest or most efficient way to do something that might take a long time and then grinding that out. So I think they're a good thing for me. But I understand that open world games generally are like a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing, where, yeah, the shooting in GTA or Red Dead is good, but it would be as good as in a first person shooter. Like, it's not as good as in COD, as much as COD might have its flaws. Like the shooting in it is precise and like visceral. So it's very hard for those games to be 10 out of 10, despite what the reviews on IGN might tell you. I'll also give a shout out to first/third person shooters. I'm a big fan of Gears of War and Call of Duty in general. I won't knock it. I've got a lot of good fun out of Call of Duty over the years. But I know in the last few years, they've kind of become synonymous with PvP gaming. Like, if you play COD, people are assuming that you play COD online, or you play Warzone, or if you play Destiny, you're playing against other people. So I do play games competitively and online, but that's definitely not my primary focus. But I know that the feeling of doing something cool, like flying around a corner, blowing someone away, changing weapons, doing all that in Gears, that feels really good to do. So I can see why people do it. And it still feels good in single player, but obviously getting one over on somebody, a real person, has that extra bit of niceness to it. So yeah. Yeah, those are mine. I'd say platformers, open world, and to a lesser extent, first and third person shooters. But Matt, what are your genres?
I'm going to jump right off the back of your PvP and say that I have enjoyed PvP games for the same reasons as I gave for enjoying Cultist Simulator in the intro. So I spoke about like cognitive load and decision making, and I think the kind of PvP games that I've enjoyed, like Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm, and before that TF2, I think because they test you mechanically with execution, but test you in your decision making, both moment to moment and in a long term sense. What is your team composition? Who has what equipped in the case of TF2? What is your enemy's team composition? How can you play to outperform them? Because sometimes someone with less mechanical dexterity can beat a team with greater mechanical aptitude if their composition is correct and they work well as a team. So I've found that really satisfying in the past, where my team has got a really sweet dive comp, and we know that the enemy team is completely susceptible to this, And it just so happens that we're all, I was never really hugely into competitive Overwatch, but I did know the meta and the compositions and stuff. So we, feed into that. And then you destroy someone even though you're worse than them because you're playing the long game better. And I find that really satisfying. I also have a love for RPGs. It stems from my D&D love, I think. I like, long play RPGs like Fallout 4 or Skyrim and others too. Not just a Bethesda shill. And I have my roguelike love. I've spoken about it many times. Usually when we're talking about what we're playing, I open up with a roguelike of some sort. And that's been since Binding of Isaac. That was when I really developed a love for roguelikes.
What would you say is your favourite roguelike? Or roguelite?
Oh, that's a question. Probably Hades.
That's a pulling out from the recent as well. I thought you just said maybe Gungeon.
I do like Gungeon. I really do. But Hades, I just like the development of it. I think it's got more intrinsic decision making. By having small bonuses that you gain in every single room, you're constantly deciding and you're constantly working towards a build. So you just become more invested in it. And it's still a challenging game. The enemies are still all different and it has its, moment to moment challenges. But you're always decision making and trying to maximize yourself. And I enjoy that a lot more than the other roguelikes tend to give out sparse rewards, but Hades just has it a bit more on tap, which I like. I also really like horror games. I love horror games. Resi 2, 3, and 4, love them all. I suppose they're more action horror than true horror, but I don't know. When I say true horror, people now, when you say horror game, everyone's like, oh, you mean Amnesia? Like, no, like survival horror, like a horror game. Because I don't class those games. Just as a side point, I've played Among the Sleep, Layers of Fear, and Amnesia. They are walking simulators to me. They're like, it's almost like the difference between like going into a haunt, like a Halloween boo scary house, and walking around a haunted graveyard. They look similar from the outside looking in, but one has fear and tension and the other one has jump scares. And I don't know, I'm not going to rag on those kind of games too much because they're good games, but I find them a bit more throwaway than something that actually enables you to decision make properly.
Yeah.
Not just do I turn left or right.
It's like those games are primarily they're just there to try and scare you, whereas like a true horror game is like it knows that the real horror is like the dread and the tension that's building up, and then you open a door and there isn't anything there, and you've done that to yourself, right? Not that I know too much about horror, but that's how I would imagine that's where the true fearness of it comes from.
Yeah, not getting too much into. I'm a horror fan, but there was a book by Stephen King where he defines horror, terror, and I think he calls it the creeps. And horror is like a giant spider or something, something huge and indestructible that you can't understand that's going to destroy you. Terror is like revulsion, or it might be the other way around actually for those two. But then he describes the creeps, and he says it's like coming back to your house and finding everything that you own has been replaced with an exact copy. That statement is what I want from a horror game. I don't want either like revulsion or indestructible monsters. I want to be invested, and I want my skin to crawl. You know what I mean? I want horror. But yeah, that's we can converse on that one another time, and I can keep misquoting Stephen King.
I'm sure I'll love it. He listens to this podcast, right?
Oh yeah, he's the number one fan, mate.
Yeah, he was the first sub.
So those are our favourite genres. What are yours? And also, Sam, what is the question for next time?
I'm so glad you asked me. The question for next episode is: should the generation of current young gamers be encouraged to be streamers, YouTubers, and/or influencers? So we're not trying to be this whole, I don't know, talk show host of, is it right for people to do this? It's just more of is that a viable financial road to set someone of an impressionable age on?
Would you like me to answer that right now?
Yes.
No.
Okay, cool. All right.
That's it.
No question next time.
Yep.
So that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, as always.
Yep, thank you for choosing to spend your time here, and keep your eyeballs peeled on this YouTube channel. We've got our new series, which is kind of underway. 3v3. And we also just did an interview with Just Jeffs, who is a streamer that moved from Mixer to Twitch. So if you want to see that interview or any upcoming interviews, keep yourself plugged in.
Yeah, if you like what you heard, you can subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell, you can get a notification for when we release new videos and stuff. And like Matt said, feel free to check out the other content, 3v3, the interviews, and we're going to be definitely doing more stuff, different series than that in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, and Facebook as well. You can come and check us out there and talk to us about anything you think about the episode, what you liked, disliked, or what maybe we should talk about next time.
Yeah, we're all ears for any suggestions or criticisms. So yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
No criticism, please. Just suggestions.
Oh yeah, just suggestions. Yeah, what am I saying?